I think we're ready to start now. This will be another debate session. So the first debate is provoked by John, who at one point claimed that he was indeed interested in, if not pining for, digital immortality. And this is obviously an idiotic notion. But anyway, would you like to go first?
I'm happy to, but I didn't mean to suggest that I was opining for digital immortality. I agree. I want to be immortal, me,
Okay.
literally. I'm happy to argue that potentially, to try to argue that it's not idiotic, though. Shall I do that?
Yeah, fine. You can give two versions, one with the digital and one
Okay.
plain vanilla.
Yeah, so I'm going to take the side of digital immortality not being idiotic, and I'm going to do so by casting a glance back in history and looking about at how human beings deal with mortality and immortality traditionally. And in particular, I'm thinking of the Epic of Gilgamesh. And it's one of my favorite stories. You don't know if you haven't read it in a while. The story Gilgamesh, king of the city, goes about and he's seeking immortality. He meets Enkidu. They beat up some goddesses. They get in fights and whatnot, and they're aiming to find this gentleman who the gods bestowed immortal life on. They meet this guy after traveling for a while and find he tells them that to be immortal you have to eat this plant. And so he gets this plant. Gilgamesh does, and as he's traversing the seas back to his town that he's king of, he drops the plant. The plant is eaten by a snake, which is why they say snakes are immortal. They shed their skin. And then he has lost this plant. And so he makes it back. He's standing on the city walls. He's king of the city. He's standing on the city walls. He's lamenting the fact that he can't be immortal because he can't eat this plant anymore. And someone leans over and says, "But look at this city. Look at this beautiful city that you've created that will stand for eternity, stand long after you are gone. And isn't that enough?" And Gilgamesh, I think stupidly, says yes. Now, that's because I want to be immortal, period. And that's a cop-out. But that aside, we do this with monuments. We do this with statues. We do this with our written work. We do this with children. They'll live on beyond us. And there's a sense in which there's some kind of immortality there. I think that is the sense in which digital immortality might not be idiotic. It's something that you could seek, something like a way to to live beyond your normal mortal coil, even if metaphysically the whole notion of digital immortality is nonsensical. But we have these sorts of nonsensical beliefs about all sorts of things. Like, you really think your children are going to hold a candle, votive offering for you long after you're gone? I'm a child. That's not true. The expectations I have, the expectations we might have for living beyond our means in that way are often, in a sense, nonsensical. This would be no different than that. Still, not exactly idiotic. Perhaps something worth striving for. I think a bit of a cop-out, not idiotic.
You know that there is a kind of halfway house towards digital immortality, which is quite popular in some places, where people collect all the digital relics that they can from their parents before their parents die, including videos of them speaking and recordings and machines that can simulate them speaking, so that you can enjoy their company in some digitally fragmented way when they're not there. I think that's idiotic.
I don't want to say it's idiotic, but I personally find it odd too, in the same way that I find, like, Holland, my wife Holland, she has like sentimental objects that represent firsts for Mira, right? Like her first pair of shoes. We have that. And like, this is something my wife, when she comes across it, I can see a shift in her composure and like demeanor. She's like feeling something of like having feelings like come back up from memory about this. I don't think that's idiotic. I don't have that relationship to objects, and I don't have that relationship to my memories. And so it is quite odd for me. So I don't keep things like that, even if she does. And I don't understand it really, but I'm not idiotic.
Okay, so now defend the the idea of digital immortality is not idiotic.
No, I don't know that like the actual idea is a
Some
metaphysical.
people believe that they are going to live immortally.
Some people used to believe that Gödel's incompleteness theorem was false. I mean, some people
So
are
they just, so I'm right.
some people
It is
are yeah, some people are not careful. So I think what's happening here is there's both like wishful thinking on one hand, optimism about like technological advances and like buying the hype, all like coalescing and perhaps motivated by a fear of death. Like, how can we live? Like, if you're, suspect if you're, say, at the top of the heap in terms of, wealth and income and power, you might be thinking, I never want this to end. I'll cryogenically freeze myself. I'll document everything I can so that I can live on beyond the mortal coil. And I will live in a way that where I'm like comporting myself in that direction because that's all I have. I'm afraid to die. I think that is confused. I do think that's idiotic. It's hard for me to argue otherwise, especially getting into like the metaphysics of what exactly would be you in digitally. Is it you? Is it the thing that like say you have all of me, like all of my recordings, all of my beliefs, and you're able to encode this in a way that machines could like make predictions about my behavior pretty accurately. Let's go as far as we can. Pretty accurately, you've got a John Beverley bot who, despite the random things I sometimes say, this bot nails it. And now that bot and I are talking. Which one's John?
All right, so you're not grasping the nettle of consciousness, so it would have to be
on purpose.
You as the same consciousness as the one that is sitting next to me.
That's yeah. So consciousness is such a fuzzy, like it's so vague and
Yeah, but
already.
we know more about our own consciousness than we know about anything else in the universe.
There's so the reason I don't enter into that, one, I don't think you need to make the case that digital immortality is idiotic. But once we get into that territory, that I start feeling a little unmoored because while you're right, we, in a sense, know more about consciousness than we know about many other things. I know more about my consciousness. If I hit Greg in the foot with a hammer, he just acts like it hurts. I don't know. I know it hurts me. And also, like when we get into those questions, I'm compelled by like multiple realizability of consciousness arguments. Like, yeah, you have Lewis's Martians, like exhibiting pain, like it just looks different on a physical level. Like they're like pulleys and levers and stuff that you won't see in humans. Nevertheless, they behave in every way that you would expect from something experiencing pain if you hit them in the foot with a hammer. Does that mean they're exhibiting pain? Does it mean that they're not exhibiting pain behavior or whatnot? Or pain behavior, but
Without
pain. Yeah.
So a thesis which I still believe is true is that the reason why Sam Altman and his ilk are spending billions and billions of dollars on creating gigantic server farms is because they want to be immortal.
So there are a couple of ways to read that. If they literally mean like that, like Sam wants to be immortal, I think he's in for a rude awakening.
And there is actually a test whether they have a subscription to one of the cryogenics libraries.
Yeah.
And some of them do. My bet would be that David Chalmers does.
Oh, really? I mean, I am in for like full on actual immortality. I don't know how to do it. I think we need to get into a better place with our science before I start exploring things like cryogenic freezing or anything like that. I'm game for that. But insofar as like just reading off transcripts and voice recordings and trying to rebuild a John Beverley or Barry Smith from that, I think Sam Altman is going to be confused and a little disappointed when he kicks the bucket, even if his bot isn't. Now, even so, like there's another way of reading perhaps what Sam is doing and others are doing, which is much like what Gilgamesh was doing, building a city that'll live on after them. Now, I think that's less idiotic.
I think the reason why Musk wants us to go to Mars is because he too wants to be digitally immortal. And he realizes that digital immortality is going to require an awful lot of well-maintained, expensive hardware. And if all the hardware is on Earth and Earth is crushed, he'll die. So the world has to spend trillions
Yeah.
of dollars on getting to Mars so that Elon can live forever.
Well, yeah, at the same time, I mean, I don't want to go find too much about Elon's psychology or motives, but there is at the same time a tendency or desire that he seems to exhibit both verbally and in his actions to populate as many people in the world as possible, because he's worried about the human race itself being eradicated. So there's a way of reading what you're describing as, hey, let's distribute the planets that we're on in case a meteor destroys us all. Also, we need more people to go live on these planets. They can both be true, of course, but yeah, have to ask him.
Nobody wins.
I don't know that there's real winning here. I am curious if other people think that what they think, I suppose, about digital immortality.
So do we have any thoughts on this matter?
I have an idea in which the way our lives go is gradually over time, cells die, new cells are made, and at one point in time compared to another, you're not made of exactly the same parts. You could say you're made up of an entirely different composition of parts. And if it were a possibility, like say Neuralink, to gradually replace the biological brain with mechanical components in a way that your self-identity would persist throughout time the same way you think you're the same person you were when you're 6 years old. I don't believe that that's a possibility at the moment, but I could see that being like a kind of stronger version of the digital immortality argument. And then I guess if your brain or whatever that is completely made of biomechanics, then maybe that consciousness could be transferable.
So you should read the section in the book, Why Machines Will Never Rule the World, about just what you described. And you won't want it to happen. The patient will either die or get messed up at the best, because we understand so little about what the cells in our brain do. And there aren't any loose ends where we can plug things in and have channels going into the brain. They're all already connected.
Greg, it's like cutting out the training set. Ruin the directing track.
I personally wouldn't want digital immortality, and I think it would be pretty odd, especially if your family members. There's a certain like psychology I think that you have to talk about, like how some people would become dependent on going to talk to their family members that passed away and asking them for guidance in certain aspects. And I think that certain people get caught up and always end up talking to their family members that passed away, or I don't know. I think it would just be really like it would end up being really weird. I don't know how to really explain it, but
I think something like, if we did have like maybe a more accurate, more compelling kind of character that we could speak to that drew up the memories of the sort that I was pointing to with Holland. Like he's just shoes, right? Like it's kind of on her, it's not going to grip her attention for that long. But if we had a bot that was like, say John dies and Holland gets to talk to me all the time, like there could be some kind of like real draw and compulsion to continue doing so. And like in doing so, not maybe make it more challenging to kind of grip with the fact that I'm not there.
yeah.
And maybe more inclined to just hold on to that as something realer than it is.
I think we already probably have those kinds of bots. Lots of people are talking to ChatGPT in that way, which is sad, I think.
But I think like as a family member, like if I were to talk to say my dad, who if he passed away and then I was going to talk to him, it would feel a lot different than talking to ChatGPT, which is like, because maybe I could go and like recognize, and like if you said that you were to almost experience the same behaviors and I could notice those behaviors that I knew only my dad had, I think that a lot of people could end up getting caught up in trying to continue to talk to this person that went away, and it would stop grief from actually happening in a certain way that I think could be pretty bad. And that's really all I have to say.
Anyone else? One person in the chat. Digital immortality could be impossible simply because of entropy. Things tend toward disorder. I agree completely. So we're falling apart every day. I certainly agree with that.
I'll fight that to the death. Entropy be damned. I'm never gonna give up.
Well, what about the draw of digital immortality and going beyond your current constraints? So whether it's Elon or look at religious figures. Think if you could take a religious figure or somebody today becomes a religious figure, how powerful that would be for their followers to be able to talk to them. Right? So
Even if it's ChatGPT that they're talking to?
well, not the current version of ChatGPT, but think of the control that you could exert too on people.
Yeah.
So I can really see, I don't know if it's idiotic, maybe unethical, in some cases, but I would see that that's a big draw or could be a big draw. I mean, I don't know if Elon wants to be the person that's making decisions 500 years from now, but you know.
I suspect that he is.
He might. I can see this outside the scope of religious figures. I mean, become enamored with Socrates. We've got a Socrates bot. People make berry bots all the time.
I haven't seen one of those.
Oh, I've seen plenty. There's Jay Bittner has a Barry and John bot. It's called a berry bot.
All right, next topic. We should allow AI research to proceed unregulated. You want to take that?
Yeah, which
Either side. I can do either side.
I can too. I'm curious what you think, what you would say.
I think we should.
Unregulated.
We should allow AI research to proceed unregulated.
Okay, you want to do that? All right, go for it.
So, first of all, the people who want AI research to be regulated are rich companies who already own the important elements of AI research, the presuppositions, the machinery and everything. And the reason they want it to be regulated is because they want to take over the regulatory bodies in their own interests by making it more difficult for other companies to join their elite club. And as we showed in the book, Why Machines Will Never Rule the World, there isn't really anything that AI can do that is going to be so terribly dangerous, except with the help of human beings. And then it's those human beings who should be regulated. You can't regulate AI, to my mind, in any kind of sensible way.
So you made an argument similar to this last week when you made the analogy of guns. We regulate guns. You wouldn't say that we should regulate guns, though, right? Like, even though it is in fact the case that humans are the most, but
I would say that, strictly speaking, we're regulating humans when we regulate guns.
that's fair. Yeah. So like the human
And
use of
cars,
AI.
too.
Yeah, right.
We have laws about how people can drive. We don't punish the car.
Fair. Right. I mean, I would imagine just on the other side, I think there are certain domains that are so sensitive that they perhaps should be regulated on the AI level, not just the humans' access to it, but also the training, right? So, and those domains are things like sorts of domains that might uncover nuclear secrets or weaknesses in cybersecurity infrastructure, or that might generate images of child pornography, stuff like that, that might be then distributed around to people willy-nilly on the dark web or not. And so those sorts of areas seem like
people with secrets that they want to protect are going to be working very hard to make sure that those secrets get protected. They're not going to be helped by regulators who I think in many cases tend to make things worse for those kinds of problems. When it comes to chatbots that give rise to increases in the number of suicides on the part of their users, I think that the owners of those chatbot companies are going to find it very much in their interest to find ways of avoiding those kinds of consequences. And again, regulation will not really change the recipes very much. It will just be.
Let me ask you this. So these bots, like the current AI landscape with LLMs being able to basically be quite interesting and perhaps useful NLP prompt spitter outers, sometimes nonsense, but sometimes convincing nonsense. We see continued training unregulated on the kind of like persuasiveness of these bots.
Yeah.
Distributing information across X and across forums at a rapid pace that we're already seeing. Don't you think that we should perhaps get ahead of spread of information in persuasive ways by these bots, at least so that we can, learn how to deal with and critically think about the content that's being given to us, even if we let it happen later. Because right now, I think we're in a situation where a lot of folks don't even be able to discern what's the bot and what's not, and so they're kind of at the whims of whomever's in control of it, being persuaded this way or that, and people certainly can be. So it's us, I think there's like a learning inflection point that might be plausible to go through before we allow that.
Have you heard of model-induced escape?
I think you've mentioned this before.
Yeah,
so for the audience.
So the idea is that if you build a spam filter, which is really successful in stopping spam, then all that will happen is that the authors of spam will use your spam filter in order to invent new kinds of spam, which the spam filter will not stop.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I imagine that that's what will happen if you have persuasiveness filter.
Mm-hmm.
That will be the signal for the people who want to generate certain kinds of content to generate it differently.
Mm-hmm. I suspect that's true. But even so, I think so that we don't get into what seems like at least an undesirable context now where we're in like, say, cybersecurity, where we're doing something very similar to like constantly having to be on the back foot and anticipate what the hackers are going to be doing next. And we're always playing catch up in that way. I suspect that's not an ideal circumstance, not a situation that we want to be in. And if we could have gone back in the day and set up architectures, perhaps with regulation, we could have avoided some of this. That's what I'm suggesting.
That's a pipe dream.
Maybe, but here, let me finish what the pipe dream would be. So it's less of a pipe dream and more like something that we do already as educators, which is pause on the training and the persuasiveness, pause on the development of the models until we can educate the populace in a way, perhaps with tooling, perhaps otherwise, to be able to understand what they're being fed by the algorithms critically themselves. Critical thinking, basically, like stop and critically think or teach new skills on critical thinking so they can deal with this stuff rather than just kind of let it wash over the populace, inform the populace as it is without regulation.
Okay. So there are all kinds of ways in which different parts of the populace start doing bad things.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever see one example where education solved such problems?
Solve problems with people doing the wrong
bad things of any sort?
Yeah, like bad reasoning. I've definitely spent a career training people not to reason. My grandfather and grandmother, great examples. My grandmother and grandfather both watched a lot of Fox News, and my grandfather was bad at reasoning, and my grandmother was good at reasoning. It was hard to argue with my grandfather. I could convince my grandmother she was wrong.
Why didn't you just educate your grandfather?
I did, but it was hard to because he didn't reason.
Education is I think, normally very weak strategy for solving social ills. And bad reasoning isn't really a social ill. It's just different levels of ability across the population. Some people are good at reasoning.
Some people can be trained to reason better than others.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, but that's a bad example. It's too close to the education industry.
That's a bad example because you agree it's a good example.
I'll let you win this one if you like.
No, okay, I'll think of another one. I mean, education. Like when does education solve the social ill? Right, like Ralph Nader and the seatbelt. Education about the importance of the seatbelt was raised in his book, and auto manufacturers were resistant to it, and then they had to start putting seatbelts in.
Okay. But then it wasn't the education that caused the population shift, it was the seatbelt.
Education about the importance of seatbelts.
Yeah, but everyone could see. As soon as you have the seatbelt, everyone who can reason would see that the seatbelt was a good thing.
There's still people today who don't think it's a good thing.
That's...
So you said education, but when did people start wearing seatbelts? When there was a penalty, when you got fined. So
Yeah,
you're
good.
both old enough to know, you know, the seatbelts were put in cars,
Yeah.
but people didn't wear.
What about the Silent Spring?
Yeah,
That was like another sort of example of this.
that's a long
This is an
story.
example that brought in like education and awareness of like ecology and whatnot, and created something of a cottage industry or a movement that ended up resulting in
Yeah.
legislation. So people were already convinced through the education that ultimately resulted in legislation that provided sanctions. So maybe that's a better example.
There's never 100%.
I'll let you win. I said I would let you win this one.
Yeah, I was saying that the education is never 100% because Silent Spring is a great example, but people still use maybe not, was it DET, but other chemicals like it. And even though they have, rules and regulations on the back of the bag saying, oh, you must only use this so many times and, avoid waterways and that kind of thing. There are people who would just say, well, I really want my grass to be green and perfect, so I don't care what the rules are. So education can't go 100%, unfortunately.
Maybe the trick is not education solving, but mitigating, addressing some of the problem. I mean, I grew up going to restaurants where people were smoking. Of course, there's sanctions, but also like over time, now sanctions aside, smoking in restaurants just doesn't happen. You wouldn't.
Where though?
Hmm?
Where? If you go down south, there's still places you can smoke in restaurants. You go to
Where?
Europe, you go
I
to
grew up in the
other
South. I
countries.
remember when they stopped doing that.
It's going down even in Europe, even in Italy. Not everyone smokes.
Yeah, but is that education or is that just?
I don't believe in the power of
it's a
education.
combination.
I don't know what it is.
You don't believe in the power of education. Okay, let me ask
And
you this. Hold on.
just to
All right, closer to home.
address social ills.
Closer to home. Social ill.
Yeah.
Interoperability. Ontology engineering.
That's
What have you
not a
been doing?
social ill.
I
That's
think
an
it's very much a social-
organizational ill.
It's
And
the
organizations
human-
can be fixed.
organizations. And how have you been fixing them?
It's a lot of hard work,
Through
actually.
people.
Well,
You
sometimes
send Bill
people.
Mandrick, you still send Bill over to RTX. You train people at CBP. I mean, it's through the people, right? And you're educating those people so they can go.
I said you could win this one.
Okay.
All right, next.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
Even if you think AGI is impossible, you should treat robots at certain levels of sophistication as moral agents. I'm not going to defend that one.
I'll defend this. This is one I suggested. I think this is interesting. I'm going to put aside whether I actually believe it, but I think it's fun to talk about in any event. So let's assume that AGI in the grand scheme, like the grand understanding of it, is impossible. And we know this because Barry and Yokes wrote that book. So we can be certain of that. That aside, you don't need it, I would say. And I think this is true. You don't actually need AGI to warrant being treated as an entity inside the moral community. There are probably plenty of humans who don't exhibit generalized intelligence to many degrees, and nevertheless we would treat them as moral agents. And moreover, animals. There are many animals that people want to include inside the moral community. There have been movements about this, still are. Like we don't go around torturing chimpanzees or pandas just for fun. We don't treat them as robots. We treat them with some element of respect and dignity, sometimes very closely to what we treat with animals. In fact, I know people firsthand who would probably let me die to save their dog. And that hurts on a personal level because it's Holland. But that aside, I think it's plausible to think that there are robots or agents of that sort that exhibit enough sophistication, become members of our lives, socioeconomic environments, just like animals, and other people who don't exhibit AGI themselves that might warrant this sort of treatment.
Yeah, so I think that there is very little connection between what machines can achieve and what organisms can achieve. And I think just as we all share so many things amongst ourselves as people, for instance, consciousness, pain, concern, and so on, so we share somewhat fewer such features with a higher animal. And so I think it's quite reasonable that we should award some kind of moral agency rights to dogs
Mhm.
and cats, maybe, and chimpanzees,
Mhm.
because they're close to us in very many ways. They have
Mhm.
98, 99% of our genes. They are conscious.
Mhm.
But the idea that a machine that, that, that can do a certain kind of implicit mathematics should thereby be treated as a moral agent, it's absurd.
So I didn't hear an argument. I just heard organisms are special and machines aren't. So that's my
No,
argument.
organisms are special because they're like us.
Again,
And
I'm just
we
hearing
treat
organisms are special.
we treat each other in certain ways.
Uh-huh.
Call those ways moral ways. So
Uh-huh.
we treat each other in moral ways. Even people with the death penalty hanging over their head
Yeah,
are treated in certain moral ways.
right. If
And
we
couldn't do that to a table.
we could do
or
that to, I think it's not implausible. I mean, some people are almost doing that now, the way they engage with ChatGPT. They both view a lot of emotions and whatnot. It's not hard to imagine that we could develop sophisticated robots that kind of walk and talk like us.
But if we think they're like us, if
Mhm.
we think they're conscious, if we think they have concerns, we're making a mistake.
Agree.
And we're interested here in truth, not
I
in the
put-
way people can have mistaken beliefs or attitudes.
So I first put aside AGI. And then just focused on whether we should treat these things as moral agents. Now you did point to animals, even dogs, because they have certain properties as being potentially within the realm of moral agents. Now I'm not seeing exactly what properties that are so special to dogs that robots couldn't have something either directly similar to or analogous to, or just have themselves.
They are spending trillions of dollars trying to build a robot which has some analogous feature,
Mhm.
and they can't do it.
But if they could.
So then the question is, if we could find a way of creating a living machine, is that the scenario?
Let's say we build a robot that is, for all intents and purposes, a dog. It does everything that dogs would do. Like it's a robot. You could cut it open and be like, okay, there were wires in there.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it barks, wags its tail, loves you, it ignores
No,
you.
it doesn't love you.
Well, okay, it behaves as if it loves you. It barks at the mailman as if it's afraid of it, and it also gets sick or exhibits sickness behavior. It exhibits dying behavior. It runs down. It does all of those things, and it's interwoven into your life the way Sir Winston is. Would you not treat that animal or think it's reasonable to treat that robot something akin to a moral agent?
So let's suppose that you have a very sophisticated four-dimensional video, or a series of videos of a realistic Mickey Mouse. So everyone has one of these boxes in their living room where Mickey Mouse comes and gives love at regular intervals, but it's just a video, four-dimensional. Does that mean that it's not even a living thing? It's just a collection of pixels and voxels. Does that merit being treated as a moral agent?
Of course not, but you've stripped away so many properties.
Well, no, it can still
But
give
I'm
give out
talking
love.
I'm talking about Sir Winston. I'm talking about robots.
But I already agreed that dogs, real dogs.
No, but not actually Winston, like a robot version.
Yeah, but you lose everything when you put the machine there instead of the
You don't lose
organism.
everything. You lose what you're not losing is exactly the sorts of things you're pointing to when you're describing like why there is this affection for care.
No,
The relationships, the
no,
interwoven.
I was pointing to similarity. So we are. I don't think this is a very strong argument. We have zero argument on the machine side. On the animal side, we have the fact that we are part of the same tree of life. We share consciousness. We share 98% of our genes. They help with
organism
the family.
bias.
Yeah, I suffer from organism bias.
No,
But then
there are
moral,
multiple
it's
ways to
reasonable
realize
that we should limit our moral agency to organisms.
I mean, if
And we would say that someone was crazy who treated a non-organism as having moral rights. So
if moral, if like
I
membership in
wouldn't.
the, so I guess I'm not so convinced that membership into the moral community hinges so much on whether it's an organism or in the tree of life, rather than perhaps some combination of that, as well as, and perhaps more importantly, the relationships and the network and like connection that you bear towards this thing. And it's like interwovenness into your life and its narrative. And maybe I'm like ethics of Carrie in my thinking. I mean, I partly am, but I think those weigh in favor. One, those weigh more or
Okay.
just as much in the moral community way or inclusion exclusion criteria, but also I think they weigh in favor here of a robot being.
So let's suppose you have a really realistic robot dog,
Mhm.
and you leave it out at night and it gets rusty because it rains. What do? You just throw the dog away. You don't.
I'd probably try
No,
to
you
fix the
wouldn't.
dog. I mean, it'd probably be expensive for one. I got a rusty dog. I try to fix it.
Anyway, I don't think you won this one.
Well, I mean, let's build the rest of the story. Like I've had this dog since I was a child. I've grown up with this dog. It's been part of my life. It's always been there. It's always behaved like a dog might. I don't know. I've never seen a dog, but all I know is this fella, Walker, we'll call him, because he likes to walk. Walker, I'm naming, been with me since a kid. He's always slept with me. And now I left him outside and now he's resting. He's like moving differently. He seems like he's not like doing well. It looks like he might be getting or behaving as if he's sick. Yeah, I probably would take care of it.
But okay, what's the point of giving this status to robots? It's protect robots' feelings or protecting humans' feelings? Because I can sell, for example, I have a guitar that I like very much.
Mhm.
I would be very upset if someone comes and break my guitar.
Mhm.
But I don't say that I never say that a guitar should have some more agents. So what's the point? Is protecting the robot or something like this from suffering? The goal is really the robot, or the goal is the people that is around the robot?
And his guitar has a module which will play reassuring music automatically if you need reassuring.
And if it seems like it's in pain, it will screech or something like that. I think in the position that I'm arguing for, which again, I'm not saying I agree with, the position I'm taking, I think I'm committed to saying it's about the human, because the robot doesn't feel things. That said, I might also offer, back to the hitting Greg in the foot with a hammer case, that walks enough like a duck and talks enough like a duck. I know just as much about him being in pain as I might know about this robot being in pain when I hit him in the foot with a hammer. I'm not experiencing it. So there could be incorrect, I think, imputing perhaps of feelings onto the robot and like treatment of the robot in a way that preserves those feelings, much like you would.
Okay, so incorrect imputing of rights then.
Yeah. So I might get off the board there because I don't think that inclusion in the moral community relies on like those things having feelings in the relevant sense.
Do you put trees into the moral community?
I don't.
Good. All right. Next one. Several people are in the chat. Regulating AI is a colloquial way of saying we are regulating how people use and develop AI. Regulation is for safety of the users. Exactly.
Go on.
AI must be regulated the same way industry and science are regulated. When something is unregulated, it is often exploited or used to exploit others. The problem is that I don't think we know enough about how to regulate this rapidly developing, screaming, squirming monster. And some steps towards regulation, I think, would cause more problems. I'm not in favor of letting it run free. On the contrary, I don't think it can run free. It needs humans to tell it where to go. All right. generative AI for specific topics like medical publishing should be regulated. I think I probably would agree with that. I was quite shocked when there was a big court case, I think it was a Supreme Court case, which said that you shouldn't be prevented from doing experiments on deadly viruses. I think that was a mistake. So if we have anything like doing experiments with computers on deadly viruses, then I would be in favor of regulation. We need a balance of education and consequences. Education is more preventative versus penalties for breaking law or policy. I think that the penalties work better.
Yeah.
And that's the seatbelt example. If we don't treat robots with respect and kindness, then we have the potential to reduce respect to living organisms as well. I don't think so. I think people are normally pretty well built to respect other human beings, at least those in their immediate vicinity. I don't think that would be affected. But I don't think we'll ever bring about a state where people will assign rights to machines. It's so unnatural.
Yeah, I actually don't think we will either for other reasons. I mean, I sometimes broach this topic at dinner parties with by asking people if they'd be willing to own robot slaves. And usually people are like, "Oh my God, no!" And I think the modus ponens there is therefore robots could never be slaves. They're just machines that don't deserve being in the moral community.
So let's look at it from a value-driven standpoint. You won't do something to your laptop that would prevent it from serving you in all the ways you need it to. Yeah, so the robot is, well, the laptop is already pretty robust. So I wouldn't actually kick my laptop, but
Sure.
I might not.
I might not disagree with this entirely. There are, I know there are, for people who have trouble surfing the web, there are like plugins you can put in, like pretty sophisticated plugins that will stop you from searching certain sites on in your browser. That's a way of restricting what you can do during certain hours of the day, for example.
Oh yeah. You've tried it, have you?
Oh, I just tried it. It was not from me. A friend of mine was having trouble not looking at Etsy. So
okay.
Try this.
AI will take away our jobs. Which side are you going to pick?
Either way, I'm happy.
Okay, you take that they will. I will say that they will not.
Okay, AI will obviously take away our jobs because it's doing so now, and perhaps in unintended ways. Lots of folks are being laid off, like software development. A lot of people like in those fields, computer programming, people who previously had high-paying jobs doing what may or may not have been monotonous work, building dictionaries and whatnot. Those people aren't getting employed anymore. In fact, they're losing their jobs. AI recently in the US government was part of the big Doge plan to reduce force. They were going to replace it with, I mean, this was the whole plan. And it certainly resulted in some people losing their jobs, at least as, you know, kind of a rallying cry, if not AI itself replacing them, which is, you know, questionable that is actually happening now. So I will start there. There's much more to say, but.
Okay, so I will start with my own experiences trying to make AI do something useful. And typically it causes more trouble than it would if I just did it myself in the first place. Over and over again, actually. And then I get the result I need and I walk away to get a cup of coffee and I come back and the result isn't there anymore. The link is dead. Now, as I understand it, reading the literature on vibe coding, there are many examples where people have thought that they could use GPT-based software in order to do their coding for them so that they wouldn't need to do any work anymore. And it turns out that it actually is more work fixing the glitches caused by the vibe coding than doing the coding yourself. And something like 90%, according to a Harvard Business Monthly Review, something like 90% of companies who started with AI projects have decided that they did not actually make the company any money. And so they're pulling back. And I think that there are some areas where AI will cause job loss. Dictionary compiling, it's not a very big industry. But I think that AI will also bring about a need for more people. Prompt engineering, AI ethicist, AI company bankruptcy managers. So that they will not take away our jobs on net. There will be a certain movement. There's a biggish movement at the moment because everyone is crazy because of all the hype.
So I can agree with this. So there's sort of a momentary and then longitudinal way of understanding this. And I think it is true that, I think we probably both agree that given the hype, people certainly have lost jobs. At the same time, there's recognition that this is more or less should be a replacement rather than full loss, because they're like new, not so much jobs, but tasks. These things can be useful for certain tasks, maybe not full-on jobs. And so like jobs are changing, replacing other jobs, and there's reorientation around the new technology. I think that, this kind of like stronger sense in which this claim is sometimes meant, which I'll try to take on now, is AI will become so sophisticated that, and in fact, we're seeing signs of this direction now, like at some point, like many of us are not going to have to work, right? Like AI will do it all. AI will be able to say, in our case, educate people. Little schools will form. They will generate content, and it will be quality enough. We can educate a whole population. So why do we need John and Barry? Like, what are we supposed to do? You think we're just going to answer emails? The bots can do that too. I think that's the concern. There will be a level of sophistication at which we can be replaceable, and it's not clear it's not clear whether or not, or I think the suggestion is so many of the tasks that we do will be gone that we won't have a place, will become obsolete. So in that sort of position, I think there may be, I'm going to stop here and say, I think that is potentially true. I think at some point it might be sophisticated enough that you and I are replaceable. They will be able to train with videos and content that sounds like us pretty accurately, communities of people to do what we do, and then we won't have jobs.
So I read this morning that there is some statistical evidence which shows that having AI teach people in relatively well-defined circumstances is more efficient than having them be taught by humans. But the experiments there were a small number of people involved, and also the whole experiment was designed by human beings, and the content that was taught was created by human beings. And you have to remember that you and I, we're not just educators, we are employees of a research universe. And so we're supposed to make the content.
That's true.
And the AI can make some content, but it's going to make content which is driven in all kinds of ways by human beings. And so I've worked quite a lot on trying to define creativity. And we don't want our students to be taught the boring old things which people knew about 100 years ago. We want to discover and teach new things. Now, how do you define creativity? You can create something new at random. And so AI could do that.
Sure.
But that's not creativity. So what does creativity involve? According to my current account of this matter, to be creative, you need to create something novel, which is such that there is a community of people who will be willing to invest in it, either by buying your book or going to your concerts or joining your ontology club or whatever it might be. If you just create something new and no one is interested, then you're not being creative. Now, to bring about a situation where you're influencing a public, perhaps forever, by creating something new is actually quite unique and difficult. And I can't imagine how a robot could do it.
I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
There was a folk band or a country band, an album that was
Yeah.
running around the community not too long ago. It was that did not exist. It had country music, like a bunch of tracks. It had made up art, made up songs, made up everything, entirely generated by AI. And it had a lot of buy-in. People were buying the
Yeah,
album.
but how many humans were involved in programming the cover art,
Prompt
generating?
engineering, just say,
Yeah,
draw
but
me
then
a
they were
cover.
deciding which of the outputs of those prompts were going to be used. They were going to be talking to the people who were letting the halls where they did they perform? It's
Oh, I mean,
non-existent
they
band.
like played it over the web. I
Okay,
was
but
actually,
there would have to be humans negotiating.
well, yeah, that's true. I was actually raising this because it sounds like this meets your quality or your criteria for creativity.
Yeah, because there are humans involved. There would be nothing without humans.
That is always true.
Well, then
For
I always win. Creative humans.
Yeah, great.
I was thinking about creativity too, and I wanted to say that AI will essentially always be playing catch up to humans, trying to replicate things that we've achieved. And in terms of jobs, since humans are creative, we will always create paradigms that AI can account for that they won't be able to do. And as long as we're here continuously progressing and being creative, AI will always have to play catch up. So maybe at one point in time, AI will cover the job sector, but then someone will invent something new and AI won't be able to do it.
So I think that what you just said is a reflection of the mathematics of AI. So everything that the AI knows, in quotation marks, it knows because it's part of its training data. Now that means that it can't be creative because everything that it knows is part of its training data. We can be creative because we're not dependent on our training data to produce ideas or new kinds of habits or new kinds of clothing.
I feel like oftentimes it's something outside of your training data, which like prompts a creative response.
Exactly.
Like people make a mistake and then the mistake creates some great invention.
I was gonna bring up a point about, I think this is very important, why we need teams, and like you were talking about in your presentation, I read the paper on organizing capacities for how when humans work with AI, then there becomes that's how when humans work with algorithmic actors, that's how AI comes to be. And especially in the classroom scenario, it has me thinking there, like if teachers were just to teach, or professors were to teach students off previous like historical data that it took from humans, because in that paper talks about how humans are the people who collect the data basically for the algorithmic actors who then use that data to basically that's how algorithmic actors work, is by using the data that humans collect. So if we only collected a limited amount of data for the algorithmic actors, then we would just basically everyone would keep learning the same thing over and over and over again. Nothing ever would be new. And if it was creative in a sense, it would just actually just be I wouldn't even, you could classify it as different maybe, but not in, I wouldn't say like totally different. It would just be the same thing, but maybe like a change in.
It would be accidentally different.
Yeah.
But I would not talk about algorithmic actors. These are just mathematical equations.
Yeah.
Mathematical equations don't act. We do something at one end, something else comes out when the mathematical equation is computed at the other end. And we did the thing that made it the starting point, and we also make the thing that comes out at the other end valuable because we recognize its value and do something with it. If the computer is just sitting there, having been trained, giving off random outputs, it's not doing anything.
I can agree with this. I can also, I think, I mean, I totally agree with the creativity point. But I also don't think that we need it to take a stand on AI will take away our jobs. But even if we do, even if we, like, say, you know, creativity outside the scope of AI. You guys seen Wall-E? The movie Wall-E? That's the kind of scenario, one where our desires, our goals, everything like our thriving, whatnot, is all kind of character or captured in like our environments. Like we just get to sit around, we don't have anything to do, and we just kind of exist. And I don't think that's a great life for sure, but seems like there are probably a lot of people that would think that's an okay life. And if we were to facilitate it and create an environment where people didn't have to work or have to think creatively, I mean, it doesn't seem implausible that people would take up that opportunity. So in a world like that, yeah, I take the crux here to be in a world like that, you're saying, sounds like, nobody would be happy, or so many people would be unhappy that they would use their creativity to do something that AI couldn't do, to get out of this kind of cycle of just, I get to survive and like enjoy pleasures all the time. And I think that is what's the word? A little optimistic about human beings.
On the other hand, actual attempts to create situations like that where people get a living wage for doing nothing are not very positive in the lessons they teach, because people don't thrive in the way that they might.
People can learn to cope with things and learn to accustom themselves to certain ways of living.
With education, I guess.
We do it all the time, not even with education, but with habits, habituation. Insofar as those are like that, I'm on board. But I hear what you're saying. I agree with you about creativity. Doesn't mean that AI won't take away our job. Doesn't mean that we can't easily imagine a world where they've made it so easy to live that coming up with new jobs not really something we're motivated to do. Wall-E.
All right. Okay. I'm going to take on this one.
Okay, which I didn't even see this one coming.
So there was a review published earlier this week, I think. No, last week, by something called CNC Intelligence Reviews, which is some kind of hotshot reviewing company. And they reviewed the new Tesla full self-driving option. The first half of the review is really positive. They point out that it's like being driven by a chauffeur, it's chauffeur-level driving habits, and so on and so on. It's relaxing and so forth. But then the second half of the review goes through a whole list of things that they got wrong, that the cars got wrong. So they found it very, very difficult to make left turns into traffic, particularly at night or during rain, to the degree that the car was either too quick in, I don't know, 48% of the cases, or way too slow in 53% of the cases, and got the right kind of decision only in a relatively small fraction of cases. And there were a number of other such examples where the car was causing more stress for the driver who wanted this chauffeur-driven level of service. That the general assessment was that this was not a good thing. It's not actually a benefit to have the car driven using the full self-driving Tesla option.
That's the case.
That's
Okay,
the set starting point.
Sure. I'm happy. Yeah, happy. So first off, the
I
sentiment.
can give you a reason why that's.
First off, the sentiment about, whether it caused stress or not, I think that's something that would work out with more experience, with, familiarity. I mean, with being in self-driving cars, I'm sure people were a little upset or nervous the first time they ever got in a car, the first time they ever were driven around by anybody, Uber.
I think
taxi,
probably
otherwise.
CNC can take that into account.
Sure. But I think that seems like not exactly relevant. But I am curious for this point, never be driverless cars. It sounds like there was. And it sounds like it didn't perform perfectly, but it sounds like there are driverless cars already. And I say that as somebody who lives in Buffalo, with perhaps the worst drivers in the world. They're not perfect, and I dislike them strongly. Still, I would count them as drivers of cars. So tell me more about how imperfect this was.
I don't get the Buffalo connection.
People in, but like, so I
People
don't
with
think-
self-driving
I don't
cars in
want to
Buffalo.
hold, I don't want to hold the, you know, the accuracy of self-driving cars, like whether there can be self-driving cars on whether they're absolutely perfect in how quickly they turn or not. Like, Buffalo's full of bad drivers that are still.
Oh, I
drivers,
see your
so-
point.
So
So
tell me more.
the reason why there will never be self-driving cars is because traffic is a complex system.
Mhm.
And any kind of software is a simple system, logic system, which means that you can't program the logic system to behave adequately in the complex system.
Mhm.
And the reason why it's a complex system is shown in the fact that strange things happen when there is strange weather or annoying pedestrians or traffic accidents further down the road, or teenagers who want to confuse a self-driving car software, or all the other things that happen at the fringes of the simple system for which the self-driving cars have been trained.
Mhm.
And then I'll just mention one other thing. There were, in December of this year, I believe, last year, 3 self-driving taxi companies in San Francisco who had actually been allowed for the first time to drive their taxis during the day rather than only between 2 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the morning. And 2 of them went bankrupt almost immediately. There's only 1 left. And that one, it turns out, has monitors, remote monitors who are actually not driving the car quite, but taking some kind of a role in making sure that the car doesn't get involved in accidents.
Yeah.
So there are no self-driving cars in San Francisco, but there's a lot of hype
Right.
to the effect that there are self-driving cars.
So I think the point about like the companies being bankrupt and like monitoring, I mean, I'm happy to grant that the technology is not adequate yet. I'm not sure it won't be, but I want to take the stronger point, or the opposing side of the stronger point, this about complex and simple systems. Let me ask you, so do you think, I'm like gardening and I see a snake move through the grass, do you think I'm like hard coded to be like, that's a snake? I'm frightened because that's a snake. Or is it more like there's something tiny moving very, very quickly and I don't exactly know what it is, but all I know is that I'm gonna move.
It's more like the former.
Yeah. Why do I think now that driverless cars have to have such precision and the randomness that happens in the world? Why can't they also be programmed to do things like, oh, there's something getting in your way ahead, maybe veer. Oh, something spontaneously pops out or like drives over the cliff or
Yeah,
something.
but
Why not stop? Why can't I? Why not? Why wouldn't that work?
It-
Regardless of simple complex systems, I mean, why? I feel like you're holding
there
the
are-
programming to a higher.
there are several levels at which one could address that question. One level is, will you be able to get the legal permits required to have the car drive around? Sorry, yeah, the car, I can't say being driven.
Driving.
The car driving itself
Yeah.
as a taxi service.
Mhm.
In order for the car to be allowed to drive itself as a taxi service, it needs to meet certain standards. They're not meeting those standards.
Mhm.
Now, why are they not meeting those standards? I have an argument for that, which says that every traffic system, apart from San Francisco between 2 and 6 p.m. when there is no traffic, is a complex system.
Uh-huh.
What that means is that you can never predict how it's going to behave. That's one feature of a complex system. And you have to be able to predict the behavior of the world in which you are sending out these gigantic. I have.
Not at all clear.
Hmm?
First of all, the idea of complex systems, we already know that simple systems in aggregate become complex systems. Each of those simple elements contribute to an actual working system. So first of all, the distinction between simple and complex, I think, is flawed.
Yes, that's why we introduce a new terminology in the book. So you're talking now about complicated systems. Simple has 2 contraries. One is complicated and the other is complex. complex is a term from thermodynamics, the dynamic system, complex dynamic system. And you can't create the behavior of a complex dynamic system by linking together simple systems.
You can.
You
It's
can't.
shown in cellular automata that there are unpredictable, or effectively unpredictable
Yeah,
sequences.
and as soon as that happens, then
We already know, even back to, Alan
Simon,
Simon, right,
Herbert Simon.
about the ant, how the ant's behavior looks
but
complex, but
each-
it's really reacting to just local situations in simple ways.
Yes, you can create models of complex system behavior which work perfectly well for a few iterations, but eventually, if it is truly a complex
So you
system,
can make
it
complex
will.
systems that don't emulate, that are complex systems in the sense of unpredictability in the exact same way that chaotic systems are complex systems.
So you're seeing,
Let me ask, just to bring it here. Okay, so it sounds like the point hinges on whether you are in fact correct that driving is a complex in the relevant sense, not complicated system. Why do you think it's
Traffic.
complex?
traffic. And traffic is a complex system because of all those human beings. If you have a Disneyland set up for your buses so that they never leave the tracks that have been laid out, it's a simple system. But as soon as you have traffic, multiple people driving independently on roads.
There's cities in China being set up to be conducive or facilitate driverless
Yeah,
cars.
that would be perfectly possible.
Would that be a driverless car?
Yeah.
Well, then I win, because they're making driverless cars. That's all I'm saying.
You win for a new Chinese cities in Disneyland. I haven't seen any of these new Chinese cities. They
Took a
thought
while to build.
they thought they had a new Chinese city in Brazil called Brasilia, and now it doesn't have any simple traffic system.
But
All
I
right.
think, even on the point of, I guess it's less obvious to me that traffic counts as a complex system in the relevant sense rather than a complicated system. Much like the ants, I like that example. It's a good example. Driving seems more like ants' behavior to me than something genuinely
Even ants'
complicated.
behavior can't be predicted.
No, but in part, that's because the environment can't be predicted. Particular physics of what happens when the ant makes a motion, but it can't be. But that doesn't mean the ant isn't working off of very simple rules. And the ants obviously survive. The analogy is the driverless cars obviously survive.
Well, unless they're in a really horrible crash.
I don't think the legal aspect of it is relevant. The legal, you'll find somewhere where anything, so that's just, so what, right? That's not relevant at all.
It's relevant to defining what I would mean by full self-driving cars or driverless cars.
Do you think a full self-driving car has to be better than a human?
No,
Ever?
no. They probably
at least
already.
on some metrics, they're already way
Yeah,
past.
they probably are better on some.
And so your criteria here for driverless cars, the qualification is something that passes like, we'll say federal and local requirements for safety.
That's one easy way of having a criterion. The criterion I have in mind goes something actually like a chauffeur. So the self-driving cars do not reach the level of chauffeur driving.
Even bad chauffeur driving? I've had
No,
bad
good.
chauffeurs. I've had bad chauffeurs that still call them chauffeurs. They're just bad.
Good chauffeur driving, which is actually the standard which Tesla was setting for itself. They wanted their FS2D to mimic chauffeur driving, which means that you are in control of the car at all times, and you do the right thing at all times. And
So this
cars,
would be this.
the cars, the clearest example is the example of just turning left into traffic. They don't do the right thing. In fact, mostly they do the wrong thing. They either go too quickly and cause traffic backups immediately, or they go too slowly.
Just, a bit, hopefully not too much of a tangent. Why left turns?
Don't you ever come out?
Oh, I do. I'm just asking, why did they have an explanation for why that was such a challenge for these guys?
No,
I'm
that
curious.
because it's a complex system.
Oh, yeah, that's probably what they said. They
Traffic on the-
cited you in there.
All right, next one. This is the one that Sebastian is interested in.
Oh, that was great. Which side would you like?
I'll take the pro side, I think.
Okay. Happy to take the call.
All right, so I've had this argument with computer scientists, but 20 years ago, it's almost unbelievable. Ian Horrocks, I think, was one of them. The idea is that in order to create semantics for an axiom system, you need to identify certain abstract entities as elements in a certain space. And then you have certain predicates which you identify as sets of those elements. And then when you reason with those axioms, which have predicates and individual constant terms, then what you're doing is reasoning over a space defined by elements and sets. Now, I do not believe that that's also the Tarski idea for first order logic semantics. I do not believe that that kind of semantics helps you understand the way natural language works, the way even reasoning in natural language works. It's a bad mimicry.
I think so. First off, I think that's true. But second off, let me run the other side. So Tarski's a great point. Just as this being a fragment of a Tarskian style language is a good point. So we're talking about fragments. We're talking about Tarski's itself characterization, and Tarski's itself, the semantics characterization was itself like a restricted characterization of how natural language works, ruling out inconsistency. Like you can't say, this sentence is false in the language. You can't talk about imperatives. You can't talk about all these sorts of things that we might want to talk about that occur in natural language. Nevertheless, I assume that we would say Tarski semantics captures first order characterization of these is in some way related to ordinary language, namely the descriptive sentences that have truth values that capture entailments of the sort that I teach people in symbolic logic. That has something to do with ordinary language. That's why I can compel you to agree with modus ponens, because I'm like, isn't this how you reason in this structural way? Similarly, when we restrict OWL semantics, the DL fragment to a restricted subset of first order logic, insofar as first order logic is picking up on something about natural language, so too is this fragment. In fact, it's picking up on the finite domain binary relation fragment of first order logic, which hopefully preserves as a sublogic inferences that you might find familiar, like transitivity.
So what is the representation in the model of bad person?
Bad person in the OWL semantics?
Or in Tarski semantics? You said that Tarski semantics does a good job. But you only have
You have
sets.
Do you have a predicate?
Elements. So
Do you have a predicate for bad?
What's the?
Do you have a predicate for like?
What's the representation of the bad?
Let's do it. So you've got a domain of individuals. We'll say they're all the people. We'll just restrict the domain to that. Now we have a predicate that we're going to introduce, and it's going to say bad. And what does that do? It identifies some subset of the domain with disqualification. They're bad, right? And now if I want to say bad people, I'm saying the set of things that are bad are right here.
So to be bad is to be a member of a certain
in the extension.
Is that what you think? That's a good analysis of what we mean by bad?
I didn't say.
Or green?
Hold on.
Or...
I didn't say, like, there's a metaphysical point that I want to put away.
No,
I'm talking purely about the natural language. Is that not okay? When you say there are bad people, don't you mean there's a group of people who aren't good or who you think are bad, who fall into that predicate? What else do you mean? What else would you mean?
Well, you're going to have to do something for me with the word group.
But I say, how about this? Simpler example. just there are two speakers in this debate
Yeah,
right now.
yeah.
They are you and me. I have a constant, lowercase j, constant, lowercase b. There's a relationship. The j refers to me, b refers to you.
Yeah.
When I'm talking about two speakers in this debate right now, I write my formal sentence and I include, say, one of those speakers, X, identical to J, one of those speakers identical to B, J and B are not identical to one another, blah, blah, blah. What am I saying?
Well, you just missed all
there are
the
two speakers right here.
interesting features about what happens when two.
I could fill it in. One of
Yeah,
them,
the question
one
is
of them
whether
has
you.
hair and the other one doesn't. I can spell that out with my predicates. And also it has like what, if the response is, John, spelling this stuff out formally in like first order logic or description or owl semantic doesn't actually capture everything that's intended in a natural language expression, like there are two speakers in this debate. I'm gonna have to pause and say, tell me more about all the ways in which you might mean this or that with natural language.
Yeah, that's where I want to go.
Yeah, but I can capture some of it in the semantics. You said it has nothing to do with the
Okay.
semantics. I just need
So what I would
some.
want is for you would need to do justice to words like group, team, or symphony orchestra.
Mhm.
Badness. You're not going to be able to do justice to any of that just by you having elements in set.
I mean, owl,
It's not what I was trying to do.
it's not.
It's the responsibility of interpretation to link the real world to what the logical sentences are. All the owl does and other first order logic do is find the consequences. If I say this and if I say that, then the following must be true. They're just following the rule. But the question of what badness is completely irrelevant.
No, the ontological kind of badness.
It's irrelevant. It's part of
It
the
may-
interpretation. You have to define that. Owl is just saying, you said A was bad here, and you said A was not bad here. And it says, fuck you, you made a mistake.
No,
Because
not
you can't be both bad and not bad.
no,
That's
no.
what owl does.
Maybe at different times. Owl can't do the time bit.
There are temporal description logics that can do the time depth. That's also, I mean, if you want to take just a simple thing, yeah, not a problem. But you're trying to lump under this basically all logical language, I think, is the extension of this, and that
Yeah.
seems unjustified.
Just like it would be unjustified for TARS to be semantic. Can't capture questions in that. The logical questions of command.
No, I wasn't thinking of questions, commands, and so forth. I was thinking of reasoning that we do, which has to do with, for instance, different kinds of groups, different kinds of meetings, different kinds of events, different kinds of ways that predicates operate in time. So what holds a big of an object at one time may not hold the same object at another time, and you can't do that. Well, you can't do that in owl, but that probably doesn't have much to do with the semantics.
Yeah, you can extend some. I mean, owl's very limited language by design, so that you can extend it ontologically. I would actually go. So I would maybe try to argue something like owl semantics shouldn't be interpreted as having to do with the semantics of what
Yeah,
language.
that was what my argument with the
Yeah.
whole Horrocks was about.
Yeah, because this language is for machines. And natural language ain't machine compatible, nor should we treat it like it is. We should figure out what works for machines.
Well, I think we can do better at
Mhm.
creating formal treatments of natural language than we're doing at the moment.
That is true. That is true. But you refuse to listen to me talk about Lewis and counterpart theory.
That's just multiplying the problem by infinity.
But like not in a high ordinal, just like a normal level of infinity, indefiniteness, not the problematic infinity. That's an Easter egg joke for you guys. You want to read Kaplan arguing with Lewis.
All right, so this is, I brought some preparatory material on this one. I can get rid of this.
No, we were supposed to bring slides.
I don't know, but I kept this under wraps.
I know some of these questions I hadn't seen.
Hmm?
I wasn't prepared for the.
I think there may be some more chat here though. I can't get into the chat either. Where?
Yeah, I just click on that. I just click on the button. It's that whole thing.
Okay. Oh, this is the robots thing. We can treat robots with a minimal level of morality, so we can practice being nice too.
It's a Kantian move. Be good to animals because it might help you be good to humans.
Might.
That's a con.
Might also help you treat humans more like machines.
It's true. Might make you treat other people like dogs.
All right, so one of the topics that I want to deal with in this course next week is the replication problem. So the replication problem in science is pretty well known. We know that people publish papers about results that they have cherry-picked so that they look as if they are statistically significant. And when someone else tries to replicate the experiment, then they find it is impossible to replicate. And 10 years or so ago, people realized that this was a terrible problem, which applied in cancer research. So there's a journal, I've forgotten the name of the journal now, but I think it's called Synthetic Chemistry. And it only published papers in which, about synthesizing chemical substances, in which the chemical substance had actually been synthesized. And it had 18% failure in replication. So it was and still is a real problem. Now, a lot of people started to experiment with policies which might lower the level of non-replicability of something. But I do not believe, and many other people also do not believe, that these policies are working, that we still have the same problem of replication. But now what I want to talk about is the fact that the problem is getting worse because people are using AI when they do science, and it's much easier to create non-replicatable science if you can do your tailoring of your p-value hacking by means of software. And so there is a paper which I just selected some pointers. So I guess we should decide. I am going to defend this thesis.
Okay.
So you have to defend yours.
So I'll say that science is ready for software.
Yeah.
And also apparently ready for AI.
Yeah. So how researchers use AI. So they use AI to uncover patterns in data. Now, I would say, given what we were talking about earlier, since the only patterns in the data are patterns that came with the training of the creation of the data, that means that science cannot discover anything new, which is a problem. And they use expert designed machine learning models, which were built by hand. They use generative AI to write code, which in former times was written by humans. And so even tasks like AI-assisted literature review, which we all do, reflect the shift towards software-driven science. So scientists are using software, and the thesis of this paper is that they don't know how to use software. So scientists are poor software engineers. So you may be the one exception to all of these rules, but they rarely follow robust software engineering practice. They don't do things like version control or automated tests or modular design. They methods evolved. So the methods that are used in industry evolved to prevent bugs and ensure reproducibility. But the research culture which obtains in universities has not kept pace. Everything I know about the way in which science is being practiced using software in universities, it supports this. I know very little, but you're nodding your head also.
No, I can agree with that.
So there is a lack of scrutiny in scientific software. So peer review, these are the worst bits, seldom includes code review. Yep. There are famous cartoons about how the author of a paper was asked to provide the version of the statistical software they used to get certain results, and they couldn't answer the question. They had no idea. So published articles summarize results derived from software that no one else has inspected. And authors usually don't share data. And if they did, we would see that the data is not easily usable. This is one of the places where we should be making a difference. And so in 93% of 1,800 biomedical papers failed to share artifact, 93%. Only 44% of science authors responded to requests for code and data. And then when the data is shared, it turns out that it's often wrong, has serious mistakes. And so auto-converting gene names, Septin2 becomes September 2. And it took decades for many fields to learn even basic statistical hygiene. And then AI now adds new sources of error. So it's not a silver bullet. Subtle errors are hard to detect, and they're not going to be detected by AI either. Using AI requires less skill than understanding AI, and undetected bugs, which you think you've detected or ruled out, can persist for years. So misused AI may waste researcher time and slow progress. And then they've written a whole book about evidence of widespread AI errors. So 600 plus papers across 30 fields in which they already discovered these ML errors. Poor baselines, weak methodology, exaggerate performance claims, and then they give COVID-19 examples. And generative AI can produce faulty code. We all know that. As its adoption expands, expect new categories of error in scientific applications and more to be discovered over time.
Yep.
So the replication problem is going to become worse with AI, not better.
So I think I can grant just about everything you've said, and partly because it's true. So it's so true. It's one of the reasons I left APL to come to academia, which I did not want to do. I thought academia is cooked, as the kids say. There's all these impure motives for generating results and like incentivizing bad research, and academics typically they'll publish a lot of papers because they have to get tenure and notoriety or just to look clever or whatever, and half the time they don't even review, they get their name on something. Who knows who's writing the paper? Maybe some undergrad who probably doesn't have the oversight into the quality that you need to get it through. But it's okay because we had peer reviewers checking it out who are unpaid, who don't have time. Yeah, it's just a vicious cycle of bad quality stuff. And you're right, AI is going to make this worse. Now, I will though pause and say the claim is that scientists aren't ready for software, let alone AI. And I think you've narrowed the scope of science just down to the academy. Well, I think you're absolutely correct. Academies could. But that's not where all the science goes. That's not where all science is produced. I came from APL, where it's not like we were perfect, but we absolutely understand version control. We absolutely had quality control checks. We absolutely were pushing the boundaries of research and weren't just going in and using generative AI because it was the newfangled tool. We had metrics and quality evaluations to make sure that our results were good. Why? Because we had to respond to sponsors who cared. Money was involved. Our incentives were lined up with producing results, not with publishing papers. Sometimes we got to publish papers. There's a different incentive structure. We produce new things, novelty. And I think in a lot of companies that aren't producing things out in the open space, things that they're selling, there's a stronger drive to actually do high quality work And I'm not saying they always do high quality work. There are also incentives to do poorly in those spaces. They're like sell hype and whatnot. But I think if you're going to look somewhere for pushing the boundaries of science and progress, probably be less in the academy for these reasons and a few others, and more on the outskirts of maybe novel companies getting venture capital who are trying to make their way out into the terrain, who aren't big and fat with all these huge contracts and can like weather not producing results, but in fact are like thirsty and hungry and need to make a name for themselves. That's where some real science is going on. Or, you know, APL, which just has integrity.
So why did you leave?
Oh, I came here because, well, one, I wanted to mature the training. I wanted to address this problem in our field and also like lay down criteria for what it meant to be an ontology engineer and how to train them. And part of that is we have to be ready for software, have to be ready for AI. That's one of the main reasons I'm here. We need more people and we need high quality, well-trained people. There's my response. Your turn.
I think we agree.
Do we? You said scientists writ large, and then you narrowed down.
Okay, so first of all, I would say APL is part of the university, is it not?
It's a university affiliated.
Yeah. Did you do any teaching while you were there? Some of your colleagues did.
Neil taught a modal logic class once, I think, but it was remote.
Yeah.
It's like loosely affiliated. It's not like we engage with faculty or them with us. It basically means like at some point there was a firmer relationship, much like with Kubrick and other universities. And if you go to APL and you work for a year, you can go get a master's degree from Johns Hopkins.
Nice.
If you, of course, finish the work and so that's kind of the extent of the relationship.
So if you were given the job of cleansing the Augean stables of academia in such a way that they would produce high quality research, which is replicatable, and so what would you do?
Oh, I don't know. I'm trying to figure some of that out now, but it has it has to do with like requiring our students to get knee deep into basic software engineering best practices, track their work, like produce results that can be evaluated, quality control. Like I want to be able to automate a lot of this, like so that they're not just sending me ontologies randomly and being like, is this good? I'm like, I don't have time to tell you, run it through the bot, right? Stuff like that. And also teaching them how to fend for themselves and create metrics and evaluations of high quality ontologies, but also train other people to do the same. So I mean, that's what I'm doing. Also, I guess trying to find people who I can trust that have like sharp instincts about and like appropriate motives for how the field should look in the future. So people who are just coming in and saying, you know, here to make a mint and, you know, come what may, I'll do what I can to make 100,000 a year. But they don't have like the kind of moral background of the character. Those people I tend not to want to train so much because I don't just want to train people who are motivated by that because they'll be easily motivated in the other directions. And so I want to train people I can trust to reliably do good work. Yeah, like the people here. But I mean, in answer to your question more directly, I'm not sure. I'm trying to figure it out. We're trying to figure it out. I think. Well, part of the answer is going to be, and it goes back to some previous stuff, identifying specifically what it is about our field that we do. What exactly is ontology engineering? And I have an answer, I think. And I think that's scopes the field and differentiates what we do from what other groups do, like conceptual analysis or data analysis, conceptual modeling. That way we have like a place we can focus our training. We can train to train in a Kuhnian revolution style. It's the metaphor that I'm running with here. Yeah.
So I think that what we need to do is to find out how we can replicate what the gene ontology managed to do 20 years ago.
If we're going to do more?
No, but if we could do that, that would already,
That's right.
that would already be a big step forward.
Yeah.
And I think we are doing a little bit of that.
I think we are.
Otherwise, people wouldn't keep coming back.
That's right. And I think we are, even over the 3 years, so not been here that long, like us working together, we've graduated people, whether formally or otherwise, people have come through here And I can see and hear in the broader community, like there's a shift in the training and it's having measurable impacts. Like it was the case that people were okay with emailing ontologies back and forth to one another, fingers crossed about the version. And now people are like, I know how to make a pull request on GitHub. I know how to check a version and a commit history. I don't actually need to bother Barry or John about this. That's a win. Yeah. There's been a shift. And also like a shift in scope and focus. This thing I say a lot about not arguing over labels as much as the definitions, like building something like a fundamental structure rather than just what maybe a database is reflecting, and then deriving what's in the database from that fundamental structure. I think that way of thinking has been influential, and people are taking that to talking to sponsors about the way they speak about data and not getting into traditional confusions about like, okay, you want to call this a resource or a target, so now I guess I have to model all targets the way you said, which is a label confusion. So I think, again, making inroads there, I see progress.
So I have one other big question, but I would prefer actually to go back to the OWL semantics. I want to put Alan on the spot. So you were worried, you were part of a group who were worrying over the definition of, was it country or nation?
Yes, we were talking about state, nation, that's.
So what was the outcome of that?
There was no firm outcome. There was the best analysis of it was by David Lutz, who showed what the various aspects of those terms mean in terms of governance, territory, population. But it's not a resolved thing, and certainly not yet something that fits in DFO and I'm comfortable with.
And you agree that OWL semantics or Tarski semantics do not have the resources to deal with entities like states?
No, I have no idea. I don't think that's I don't know that actual natural language has the ability to deal with it. I don't know why you think that natural language is something that they're not reasoning when we write words down in sentences. The reasoning is happening behind the words. Where's the output?
Politicians and ambassadors, diplomats, practically all people engaged in international trade are reasoning about countries and borders and so forth.
Sure, but they're not doing it in English. They're not reasoning in English. They're speaking in English. They're trying to communicate in English. They're not reasoning.
Look, do you think, what do you think is happening when somebody says country, just in general? Like if some ambassador says country, if I say country, if Alan says country, do you not think that there's an interpretation
that captures the essence of the ontologist's job?
Uh-huh.
People don't know what they mean when they use the word country.
I think that's true, and I think there's at least one strategy which I suggested to Dave and David earlier on, which is if you really want to allow for that kind of ambiguity, you have a defined class.
I didn't say ambiguity.
Inconsistency?
They just don't know what they use the word perfectly well.
Same strategy will apply.
Because there are countries,
Uh-huh.
but they don't know what countries are.
Sure.
It's our job,
Let's have,
in my mind, to find out what countries.
well, one way of respecting ordinary language, have a class named country. It can mean different things, disjoint union of those things, territory, people. The thing is, nobody just means all of those at once when they're speaking. There's the ambiguity. What do they mean? Ask them more. Do they mean the people? Do they mean the government? Do they mean whatever else goes into the disjoint union? Now you've got a way to capture the kind of vagueness or under specification of the language without making them say something crazy. Now, unless they wanted to say something crazy, like I actually meant something that's both the territory and the government at the same time.
That's where I was supposed.
Yeah.
You said it's territory and you said it's governance. And no governance is territory,
Right.
and therefore you said something wrong. That's all I.
Right.
Al doesn't say what it means to do the country.
That is where we come in. But OWL was never meant to be. OWL was like a very minimal logical, like disjointness, subclass, existential restrictions, universal restrictions. Much like you
Unless you
see.
capture some class of errors that would you thought that people would logically think.
Mhm.
And so it's a benefit when it does that. It's pretty much, it's a very shallow idea of like utility value.
Now what you should go in is say something about like how it also facilitates misuse and misrepresentation, like we're talking about, like all time sometimes confusions, because it's true, right? Like people mean they don't mean parthood all the time, or sometimes, or do they? But they'll certainly assert
You shouldn't ask
transitive.
anybody to open their mouth.
Yeah,
You know, it's hard to be precise about it
Yes, that's right.
when you get down to it,
Mhm.
unless you're, I mean, that might be understandable.
even then, we don't know quite what you
But
mean.
even then, we don't know. quite. That's right. That's right. Do I mean the cables too?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it has something to do with semantics of ordinary language. Not the whole kit and caboodle. Oh, but something.
I should have expressed it differently. I
know,
should have said
you
that
really should have.
people who obsess over owl semantics are not going to make progress with the semantics of ordinary language. And by the semantics of ordinary language, I mean ontologically well-grounded semantics,
See.
not set theoretic semantics. So for a long time in my life, this is a kind of secret chapter because nothing came of it. I was trying to create a version of Tarski semantics, which was based not on set theory, but on topology.
Interesting.
Never.
Huh.
Some of the work I did on Mariology were contributions to that idea, but
Mhm.
I didn't ever get the topology to play a useful role.
Interesting. Did you ever? I'd be interested in seeing that and how it might be expanded over parts of natural
I'll
language.
dig out what I did.
Yeah. So I'm really myself interested in non-standard models when I'm reflecting on natural language, like some non-standard, like non-Tarski expansions of the things that would allow for inferences that you would have over commands or inferences of a question or something like that. I built some core logics that don't look like what you would see with Tarski, but the model. I mean, you've seen a talk. I gave a talk here about some of that, but and for me, it's the models look weird. The formal models look weird, but they get the right input output results, and I'm okay with that. Insofar as they preserve the right designated.
I want the models to be ontologically non-weirdly grounded.
Sure, yeah. So you're like not a fan of like the Rutley star, or
No.
because it's like, what does that mean? Formally, you're not okay with just a functional speaking. Okay.
Anyone want to say anything? Will we close this down?
Are you not entertained?
Thank you.
All right, so next week I will try and talk about replication.
Got a good start here. Well, thank you for having me. This was a great deal of fun. I love debating in general, and you're one of my favorite people to debate with.
Yeah, it's a
Alan,
pity you always lose.
What's that?
Nothing.
Yeah. Oh my. Oh yeah. I'm happy to lose too. I always learn something.
Mm.